Some people have asked me about Project Veritas, and they want me to cover the story about James O'Keefe. If you've heard, he's been put on paid leave or something to that effect. And I will have at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast a story about this and some new information and confirmation and details. Been working behind the scenes to cover this story. But for now, for this, as I'm still working on the story and collecting the details, we're going to talk about another shocking story. This is from timcast.com. Second New Jersey Republican elected official shot and killed within a week. Authorities have not identified a motive, but confirmed the victim was the intended target. My friends, this is the second New Jersey Republican that has been shot and killed. The story, the previous story was Eunice Dwumfer, the first black woman elected and a Republican, was targeted and I'd say assassinated. We don't necessarily know the motives, but typically when you're dealing with politicians being killed, assassination. I guess the difference between murder and assassination is it political or is it personal? And I can't speak for this guy, but it certainly does sound like the targeted killing of Eunice Dwumfer probably leans into the political to a certain degree, especially now considering that we have two stories of two different Republicans who have been shot and killed. Yeah, it seems like this is political. And it really does make me take stock of everything that's going on right now, because there is a lot of tension, conflict, and drama. And this one's been interesting. You know, hearing of the news about Veritas, obviously stop Big Con, the drama there. Obviously, there are people who are feuding with me, who are upset with me. And it's making me think, it's time to stop. You know, two Republicans were just shot and killed in the past week. We got to figure this one out. And the fracturing is probably a very, very, it's very, very dangerous right now when we need to be focused on the real dangers that we face as a country. I'll talk more about that at 4 p.m. because I have some information pertaining to Project Veritas that is unreleased, and I need to make sure we verify the details. But I definitely want to get into, at least at that point, the bigger picture here, because it's getting crazy. It's getting crazy. I hope things don't get crazier, but as most of you know, I've talked about civil war. So this is scary stuff. From timcast.com. For the second time in only a week, a New Jersey Republican elected official has been shot and killed. Milford Borough Councilman Russell Heller was murdered by a coworker on February 8th outside of a public service enterprise group, PSENG facility, where he worked as a distribution manager. Now, on the surface, this one may not be political. We don't know. Or it could be explicitly that. I mean, some might argue that because he was working his other job, it may not be political, but I got to say, maybe people are snapping. Heller served, Heller served as a borough councilman in the Hunterdon County's community of Milford. He was first elected in 2017 and reelected in 2020. His death comes just a week after New Jersey councilwoman Eunice Dwumfer was shot to death in a vehicle outside her home. The Somerset County prosecutor says Gary T. Curtis, the suspected gunman, approached Heller outside of his vehicle in the PSENG parking lot around 7 a.m., shot Heller when he got out. Detectives traced Curtis's Mercedes-Benz to the Bridgewater train station several miles away, where authorities found Curtis dead from a self-inflicted gunshot. Authorities have not yet determined a motive, but did say that Heller was the intended target. Quote, "We are heartbroken at the tragic death of Russell Heller, senior distribution supervisor at PSENG. Russell was an admired employee and a supervisor with over 11 years of service with PSENG. He will be sorely missed by all, and our thoughts are with his family at this difficult time. This event is tragic and disturbing, and we are offering support to our employees as they process this. We are cooperating with law enforcement with respect to their investigation. Questions about the investigation should be directed to law enforcement." New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy issued the following statement. Shortly after the incident, early this morning, a deadly shooting took place outside of a PSENG facility in Franklin Township. Our thoughts and prayers are with Russell Heller's family and friends in the wake of this tragic act of gun violence. You see what they do? Gun violence. Or is this someone intending to kill a Republican? U.S. U.S. House Rep Tom Keene posted a statement to his Facebook page offering his condolences. I am shocked and saddened by this tragic murder of Milford County Councilman Russell Heller. Russell was an outstanding public servant who proudly represented the river town he loved. My prayers are with his family in the Milford community. Authorities have requested anyone with information related to the shooting to contact the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office Major Crimes Unit. They then provide the address and phone number. We have this story from the New York Times. Vigil held for slain councilwoman as FBI joins hunt for her killer. Hundreds of people gathered Wednesday in Sayreville, New Jersey, to remember Eunice K. Dwumfer, the first ever black person elected in the small borough. They say in the week since a New Jersey councilwoman was shot to death in a car on the street outside her house, the police have interviewed friends and family members and enlisted the help of the state police and the FBI. But the county prosecutor speaking publicly on Wednesday for the first time about the case, said that the investigation into Eunice K. Dwumfer's killing remains unsolved. Hours later, hundreds of people gathered for a vigil in honor of, excuse me, geez, I really can't talk right now, guys. In honor of Miss Dwumfer, a 30-year-old Republican trailblazer who was the first ever black person elected in the small borough of Sayreville. She was remembered by the town's Democratic mayor, Victoria Kilpatrick, for her radiant smile and willingness to be a role model to young girls. Wearing her signature sparkling high heels, Ms. Dwumfer broke through the glass ceiling. Earlier in the day, the governor ordered flags to fly at half-staff statewide in Ms. Dwumfer's memory. The state's Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Y. Oliver, and the leader of the assembly, Craig Coughlin, both Democrats, each spoke at the vigil, underscoring the deep sense of loss and shock felt over the mysterious killing. Don't forget what she packed into those 30 years, Miss Oliver told the large crowd gathered at Epic, a non-denominational Christian church in Sayreville, adding that she identified with the grit that it took for Miss Dwumfer to enter the often rough-and-tumble world of New Jersey politics as a black woman. She asked the community to embrace Miss Dwumfer's young daughter, Nicole, and do all that we can to help her stand up. A photo of Miss Dwumfer dressed in festive wedding attire appeared on one of the 3 large screens in the church as soft music played in the background. Ushers passed around boxes of tissues to emotional mourners. Hopefully the monster who was responsible for this will be found, Ms. Coughlin said. Ms. Dwumfer's family is from Ghana. She was married last year to a leader of her church, Champions Royal Assembly, a congregation based in Nigeria, according to messages she and her husband, Ez Kings, posted to Facebook. Maybe Ezzy Kings. Yolanda Ciccone, probably pronouncing that wrong, the Middlesex County prosecutor, Ciccone, said that investigators do not at this time believe that the killing was tied to activities outside the United States. My personal opinion, based on what we're seeing, it's political. But to hammer everything looks like a nail. And as somebody whose whole world is rooted in politics, culture war, etc., it makes sense that I would see it that way. So maybe that is not the case. Take it all with a grain of salt. But I can't help but shake that feeling, my friends. Something's happening. We're all part of. Something weird's going on. I mean, look, I made this joke tweet earlier. You maybe heard me talk about it, where I said Stephen Crowd in the Daily Wire, me in the Quartering, and Project Veritas and James O'Keefe. You know, and I'm thinking, like, how are all of these things happening right away? Because someone asked me this. They were like, do you see all this drama erupting? Like, there's like a bunch of other anti-establishment or conservative commentators are feuding with each other. And I'm like, yeah, it's really being gutted and ripped apart. It's interesting, isn't it? People being pitted against each other. Why? How is this happening? I mean, it's not orchestrated. Like no one sent me any documents telling me what to say. That was a joke. Although some people take it seriously. Whatever. But when you see stories like this, this may be the single worst past few weeks for the anti-establishment, libertarian, and conservative counterculture than we've seen in the past decade. And maybe that's something that we need to correct right now. But I don't know if you can. I think, people are really torn on all of this stuff. But I will say, seeing another Republican be murdered certainly does make me take stock of things. That's for sure. I don't know what the answer to all this is. It may not be political at all. But it certainly seems like, I hate to say it, but things are worse now than they've ever been. No, I mean it. I know. Maybe it's hyperbolic because we've seen Antifa walking around. We had that guy in Portland shoot that other Trump supporter. But just in terms of the stability of any kind of opposition to the machine, doesn't seem to be going all that well. It seems to be chaotic and facing destruction. Now, aside from the drama that I already mentioned, of course, you also had in the House the battle with Kevin McCarthy. But it's like we're all taking sides. We're all agreeing or disagreeing. It's very, very strange. So I'm wondering if there is an element of intent behind what's causing the turmoil, the disruption, and the fracturing of those who oppose the establishment machine. Have we become too much of a threat to the machine to where they now have to apply subversive methods? I don't know. All I know is, somebody killed these people, man. Let's read a little bit more. This is our number one priority. Miss Ciccone, I'm going to pronounce it every different way, said in an interview after an unrelated event, "There is no expense being spared. We have all of our detectives working on it." When asked by a reporter if the killing might have been a political assassination, she said, "I really don't want to comment on that. I think it is. The FBI is helping investigators conduct scientific analysis," she said, but declined to elaborate. Ms. Ciccone also said that her office had blocked efforts by news organizations to obtain video footage from the night of the shooting out of respect for Ms. Dwumfer, who has not yet been laid to rest. Ms. Dwumfer was shot around 7:20 p.m. last Wednesday outside of her apartment in Parlin, an unincorporated section of Sayreville. Her car rolled down the street and crashed into parked cars at the base of a hill. The sprawling complex of 3-story apartment buildings and duplex homes is known as Camelot at La Mer, and it backs up against the southbound lanes of the Garden State Parkway. Now, I do want to add, I don't think these people lived next to each other. I don't know if these people had any relation to each other. They say other officers reached into shrubbery and beneath sewer grates near where she was shot in what appeared to be a search for a weapon. Ms. Ciccone offered no information about a possible suspect, but she did say that there was no ongoing threat to the community. "We will solve the case." Many of the mourners Wednesday night said they were congregants from a Pentecostal church where Ms. Dwumfer worshipped as a child in Newark and from Champions Royal Assembly. "She was a good girl," said Grace Affle of Hillside, New Jersey, who said she had known Ms. Dwumfer since the young woman was a child. "I'm pretty sure that the police will not relax until they find the person who did this horrible thing." So that's my question, I suppose. Look, we want to find patterns, especially for someone like me who's constantly looking at the political conflict and tension. I'm cognizant of this fact, which is why I say take it with a grain of salt. I don't know that these could be coincidences. Sometimes people get murdered, but I can't shake that feeling, man. I can't shake that feeling that with this and so much else going on, that there's something, I don't know. Maybe it's not political or personal. Maybe it's something more spiritual. Maybe this is the kind of thing that makes me want to believe in astrology. Let me look to the stars and figure out where's the moon or Mercury or whatever, because what is going on? The conflict, the crisis, the infighting, the instability. These are crazy days indeed. And I can't help but feel that we're going to see things get crazier as the year progresses. I'm wondering if a lot of what we're seeing in terms of political conflict between the anti-establishment factions has a lot to do with, you've got Ron DeSantis and Trump fighting. You've got the House infighting. You've got the Daily Wire and Crowder. You've got obviously me and other personalities who are feuding. You've got people canceling subscriptions for one channel and threatening to cancel for another channel. What's going on? Why is this happening? And should we all just say, okay, let's not do this? Or do people really just hate each other? I'm wondering, man, because seeing people get killed has me worried that if political violence is going to start escalating, and I don't know what degree I would weigh this as political violence. Usually I like to give a percentage probability that I would make a guess towards. I got nothing here. I think there's a strong possibility these are not political, right? And it's only because I live in this political world I'm thinking that. But if we do start to see the ramping up of political conflict, 2 Republicans shot and killed in New Jersey within a week. I think at that point, you at least have to say, let's check into that angle. You don't just say, well, no, they're two completely unrelated things. Look, they're politicians at the very least. Two politicians shot and killed. At any point when you see something like that, you should be like, no, we should investigate that as a potential motive. I don't have the answers, man. I don't. But it does feel like something dark stands before us, at least from what I'm looking at. And, man, what do? Turn tail and run, or confront it and face it head on? Do we call to set down our swords and have all of these different drama feuding factions, just stick to what really matters? Individual liberties, personal freedoms, opposing woke cults and the far left? I don't know, man. I don't know. Perhaps it's not as bad as it was with the Summer of Love. I mean, that was really, really bad. And maybe this summer it won't be nearly as crazy. But one thing we've not seen since the start of the Trump era is GOP infighting in a primary. When Donald Trump was running, of course, he was calling out other Republicans, and it was pretty brutal. Then he gets elected, and we have 4 years of Trump. And then we end up with Trump as the incumbent who's running again. We see infighting among the left. We see political conflict. We see physical violence. But there was no infighting among the anti-establishment and the right and the libertarian factions. Granted, they're kind of coming together into a certain respect. And I think it was because there was no need to figure out who was going to dominate this side of the culture war. But now perhaps what's happening with this drama and the feuding is different values clearly exist. And perhaps there's going to be an internal civil war as it pertains to the ideological factions of what we would call the culture war right. Is it going to be classically liberal and academically approached concepts? Is it going to be moralistic outrage, religious, or perhaps it'll be drama-fueled, persona non grata, how dare you defy the mob? Man, I'm not going to pretend to have the answers. I'll only tell you that united we stand, divided we fall. If we cannot come together and figure out what it is that we're working towards and why, negotiate those terms, you will see more of these killings. I'm not saying this one is for sure politically motivated. You will see more killings like it. These are Republicans who are being killed. Is there a story recently about Democrats being killed? Well, the media will come out and say Republicans are the extremist threat, and therein lies the problem. With the woke cult, the mind capture that so many of these people are under, man, they believe the economy is good. They march in lockstep. And independents and Republicans are in disagreement, but unified on what may or may not be true, actually following the facts and trying to understand the stories. So, again, as we're moving into a primary year, I think we're going to see political turmoil between various factions that are only tangentially aligned become more pronounced, way more pronounced. You've got people attacking Steven Crowder, saying that he's causing problems for the movement. You've got people attacking the Daily Wire saying that they tried screwing over Steven Crowder. You've got loyalists on both sides, but the drama extends. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene siding with Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz going against him. Matt Gaetz now saying he gives Speaker McCarthy an A rating. But what's going on? Project Veritas, this is really, really big news. Now, Project Veritas has ousted James O'Keefe. I've got new information that I will be covering and revealing that I've been working to confirm and working with other journalists to figure out what's going on. There's been leaks, there's been rumors, but I've got some interesting hard proof. So I know a lot of people wanted me to focus on that solely, but I'll have that up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast, and I need to confirm some of these details. But I can only say this before, obviously not having gotten, if you're listening on the podcast, obviously you've heard that first. But I got to say, guys, I'm not sure there is mending the dramatic divides that are ripping apart the anti-establishment movement right now. I cannot see anybody willing to compromise what they view as their morals and ethics to negotiate and try and move forward to combat horrifying things like this and push back on the woke cult. And that being the case, man, it kind of feels like the woke cult is going to pull ahead on this one. And you've got elements within the World Economic Forum, the Davos Group, and things like that that are going to be also happy to see that the only thing standing in their way is being ripped apart. Donald Trump targeting Ron DeSantis. Like I mentioned, Daily Wire, Steven Crowder, me, and the quartering, or whatever you want to call it. James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, the members of Congress and the Republican Party. Everybody seems to be in some kind of feud. And divided we fall, man. I just want to make sure that you understand that. So I don't know who's going to be the first to say they're willing to accept terms they don't agree with. I don't know. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m., as I mentioned. We'll be talking about Project Veritas and James O'Keefe. I've got some new breaking information. And this is getting really interesting, so we'll talk more in depth on this. I'll cover that story. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.